Mom called me a failure and kicked me out, then gave my sister the house. 3 years later, my sister drove by my place and froze. She called Mom, shouting, "Mom, this house is worth weight. It's hers, my sister's." What Mom did after that, I never saw coming. The day Mom told me to leave, I was folding laundry in the basement. 23 years old, working 2 jobs, and still living at home because rent in our city had become impossible. I heard her heels clicking down the wooden stairs, each step deliberate and sharp. "Jasmine," she said, not even waiting until she reached the bottom. "I need you out by the end of the month." I dropped the shirt I'd been folding. "What?" "You heard me." She crossed her arms, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her blazer sleeve. "You're a grown woman. It's time you figured out your life instead of living here like some kind of parasite." The word stung worse than a slap. Parasite. I worked 50 hours a week between my receptionist job at a dental office and weekend shifts at a coffee shop. I paid her $300 a month for the privilege of sleeping in the room I'd grown up in. I bought my own food, did my own laundry, and barely even saw her most days. "Mom, I'm saving for a place. You know the market right now." "Your sister managed just fine." She turned to go back upstairs. "Ashley got her degree, got her career, got married. What have you done? You're 23 years old with nothing to show for it." My throat tightened. I had dropped out of college, yes, but only because Dad got sick and someone needed to help with his care while he went through treatment. Someone needed to drive him to appointments, pick up prescriptions, sit with him during the bad days. Ashley had been 3 states away at her fancy university, and Mom had been too busy climbing the corporate ladder at her pharmaceutical company. "That's not fair," I managed. Mom paused on the stairs, glancing back. "Life isn't fair, Jasmine. The sooner you learn that, the better. I want you out in 3 weeks." She left me standing there among piles of half-folded clothes, my hands shaking. Dad had been gone for 2 years by then. Cancer won in the end, despite everything. I thought maybe Mom and I would grow closer after losing him, but instead she seemed to resent me more. Maybe I reminded her too much of him. We had the same dark curly hair, the same tendency to see the best in people, the same quiet way of moving through the world. Ashley was Mom's golden child blonde, confident, sharp-tongued, like our mother. She'd married Connor, a real estate agent who wore too much cologne and called everyone buddy. They lived in a nice condo downtown, the kind with adornment and granite countertops. I found a studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, the only thing I could afford with first and last month's rent. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's television at all hours. The kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in, but it was mine. Moving day. Ashley showed up with Connor to help, though. Mostly she just criticized my furniture choices and wrinkled her nose at the neighborhood. "You know Mom's just trying to motivate you, right?" Ashley said as I unpacked boxes. "She wants you to succeed." She called me a parasite. Ashley waved her hand dismissively. She was probably just stressed from work. "Don't take everything so personally, Jazz." Easy for her to say. She'd never been on the receiving end of Mom's disappointment. She was the daughter who did everything right while I was the cautionary tale. After they left, I sat on my second-hand couch and cried until my ribs hurt. The studio apartment became my launching pad, though I didn't know it yet. I kept working my 2 jobs, kept saving every penny I could. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I learned to cut my own hair from YouTube tutorials. I stopped buying anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. At the dental office where I worked, Dr. Martinez noticed how organized I kept the files, how I'd streamlined the appointment scheduling system without being asked. One day she called me into her private office. "Jasmine, have you ever thought about becoming a dental hygienist?" she asked. I almost laughed. I can't afford to go back to school. "What if the practice sponsored you?" She leaned forward, hands folded on her desk. "We'd pay for your certification program, and you commit to working here for 3 years afterward. You'd make twice what you're making now." I stared at her, waiting for the catch. "I see potential in you," Dr. Martinez continued. "You're reliable, you're good with patients, and you actually care about doing things well. Those qualities are rarer than you'd think." I accepted before I could talk myself out of it. The 18-month program was brutal. I worked at the coffee shop on weekends and studied every spare moment. My studio apartment became a monastery of discipline, early mornings, late nights, textbooks spread across every surface. I didn't go out. I didn't date. I barely saw anyone except my classmates and patients. Mom never asked how I was doing. Ashley would occasionally text me photos of her vacations or her new handbag, always with some comment about how I should treat myself more. I graduated at the top of my program. Dr. Martinez threw me a small party at the office, and my coworkers gave me a card they'd all signed. It was more celebration than my own family had given me for anything in years. My salary doubled just as Dr. Martinez promised. Suddenly, I had breathing room in my budget. I kept living like I was broke, though, funneling every extra dollar into savings. A plan had started forming in my mind, hazy at first, but growing clearer. During this time, I started taking online courses in real estate investing and property management. Late at night after my shifts, I'd watch videos about house flipping renovation techniques and market analysis. My tiny studio apartment became a university of self-education. I filled notebooks with calculations, potential neighborhoods to invest in, and strategies for maximizing property value. The other hygienists at the office would invite me out for drinks after work, but I always declined. They probably thought I was antisocial or stuck up. The truth was simpler. Every dollar I didn't spend on a cocktail was a dollar closer to my goal. Every Friday night spent at home studying property listings instead of at a bar was an investment in my future. I remember one particular evening when Sarah, one of the dental assistants, cornered me in the break room. "Jasmine, you're 24 years old. You need to live a little. When's the last time you went on a date, bought yourself something nice?" I smiled politely and made an excuse about being tired. How could I explain that I was living? That every sacrifice felt purposeful, every choice deliberate, that I was building towards something none of them could see yet. My relationship with money had completely transformed. I started seeing everything through the lens of opportunity cost. That $15 brunch that was half a gallon of paint. Those new shoes everyone was wearing that was a vintage light fixture from an estate sale. I became obsessed with finding value with making every dollar work harder. I also started networking in ways I never had before. I attended free real estate investment meetups at the public library, sitting in the back and absorbing everything the speaker said. I introduced myself to contractors at hardware stores, asking questions about materials and labor costs. I volunteered at Habitat for Humanity on weekends, learning construction techniques while helping families in need. One of the contractors I met, an older man named Bill, who'd been in the business for 30 years, took me under his wing. He saw something in me, maybe the hunger, maybe the determination. He started teaching me things that YouTube videos couldn't: how to spot foundation issues, how to negotiate with suppliers, which shortcuts were acceptable, and which would come back to haunt you. "You've got good instincts," Bill told me one Saturday as we worked on framing a wall, "and you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. That's rare." He didn't know that getting my hands dirty had become my favorite thing. There was something deeply satisfying about physical labor, about seeing tangible results from your efforts. After years of being told I was wasting my potential, I was discovering what my potential actually looked like, and it had nothing to do with the path my mother had envisioned for me. I also reconnected with a local community college where I dropped out not as a student this time, but to access their business resource center. They offered free seminars on entrepreneurship, small business loans, and financial planning. I attended every single one, taking meticulous notes and asking questions that made the instructors remember my name. Through these seminars, I met Elena, a financial advisor who volunteered her time to help young people understand money management. She looked over my budget and savings plan with an impressed expression. "Most people your age are drowning in credit card debt," she said. "You're actually building wealth. Do you realize how rare that is?" I didn't feel rare. I felt desperate. Desperate to prove everyone wrong. Desperate to build security for myself. Desperate to never feel as powerless as I'd felt the day Mom kicked me out. Elena helped me understand investment strategies and showed me how to maximize my credit score. She explained how banks evaluated loan applications and what I could do to make myself more attractive to lenders. Every piece of information felt like gold, like ammunition I was storing up for a battle I knew was coming. Around this time, I also started documenting everything. I created spreadsheets tracking every penny I earned and spent. I photographed inspiration for future home renovations, organizing them into digital folders by room and style. I researched neighborhoods looking at crime statistics, school ratings, development plans, and property value trends from the past decade. My friends from high school, the few I still talk to, thought I'd lost my mind. "You're obsessed," one of them said when I declined yet another invitation to go out. "What are you even saving for?" I couldn't tell them. Saying it out loud felt too vulnerable, too much like jinxing it. What if I failed? What if I spent all this time and energy and discipline only to fall short? better to stay quiet, to keep working toward the goal that only I could see. Around this time, I reconnected with an old friend from high school named Marcus. We'd been in art class together, both of us quiet and creative, comfortable in the back row. He'd gone into architecture and worked for a firm downtown. We met for coffee one Saturday, and he told me about a foreclosed property he'd noticed in an up-and-coming neighborhood. "It's a disaster," he said, pulling up photos on his phone. "But the bones are good. Victorian-era solid construction. Someone tried to flip it and ran out of money halfway through. Banks desperate to unload it." I looked at the photos. Peeling paint-boarded windows, overgrown yard, but I could see what Marcus saw. High ceilings, original hardwood, under the grime, beautiful woodwork around the windows. How much, I asked. He named a number that made my stomach drop, but it wasn't impossible. With my savings and a loan, I could just barely reach it. "You're crazy," my coffee shop manager said when I told her I was considering it. "That neighborhood's still sketchy, and you'd be taking on a money pit." Maybe I was crazy, but I'd spent 3 years being careful, being small, playing it safe in my tiny studio. Something in me wanted to take a risk, to bet on myself the way no one else had. I bought the house. The closing process was terrifying. Sitting in the title company office, signing page after page of documents that bound me to this massive decision, I kept waiting for someone to tell me I'd made a mistake. The loan officer, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes, seemed to sense my panic. "First-time buyer?" she asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "It's always scary," she said, "but you've done your homework. Your financials are solid, and this property has good bones. Trust yourself." Trust yourself. Such simple words, but they landed like a revelation. I'd spent so much of my life waiting for permission, for validation, for someone else to tell me I was making the right choice. But this was mine, my risk, my investment, my future. Walking into the house with the keys in my hand felt surreal. It looked even worse than it had in the photos. There was a hole in the dining room ceiling where rain had leaked through. The kitchen cabinets hung at odd angles. Someone had spray-painted graffiti on one of the bedroom walls. The smell of mildew and rot was overwhelming. I sat down in the middle of the living room floor and laughed. Not happy laughter, the slightly hysterical kind that comes when you realize you've jumped off a cliff and there's no going back. Marcus found me there 20 minutes later, still sitting on the filthy floor. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "About 1,000 of them." He sat down next to me, not caring that his nice work pants were getting dirty. "You want to know what I see when I look at this place?" "A money pit. Potential." He gestured at the ceiling. "Those are 12-foot ceilings. You know how much people pay for ceiling height like that in new construction. And look at this woodwork." He ran his hand along the window frame. "This is old-growth lumber. They don't make stuff like this anymore. Someone built this house to last." His enthusiasm was infectious. We spent the next few hours walking through every room, Marcus pointing out details I'd missed: the quality of the plaster walls, the way the house was oriented to catch morning light, the original built-ins that were hiding under layers of bad paint jobs. "We're going to need to tackle this systematically," Marcus said, pulling out a notebook. "Structural stuff. First, roof foundation, electrical, plumbing. Then we move to cosmetic. If we do it right, stay organized. This is totally doable." That night, I created what I started calling the master plan, a room-by-room breakdown of everything that needed to be done with cost estimates and timelines. I color-coded it by priority red for urgent yellow, for important green, for cosmetic. Looking at it all laid out made the project feel less overwhelming and more like a puzzle to solve. The first few months were brutal. I'd work my regular shift at the dental office, then head to the house and work until dark. Bill, my contractor, mentor, came by on weekends to help with the major structural issues. He taught me how to replace sections of rotten floor joists, how to rewire outlets safely, how to properly ventilate the attic to prevent future moisture problems. "Most people would hire all this out," Bill said one Saturday as we worked on replacing the subfloor in the bathroom. "But you're learning skills that'll serve you for life. You'll never be helpless in your own home." I'd never thought about it that way. The helplessness I'd felt when Mom controlled everything in my life, this was the opposite. Every skill I learned was a form of freedom. The neighborhood threw me for a loop at first. My immediate neighbors were a mix of elderly people who'd lived there for decades and young couples like me who saw potential. Mrs. Chen, who lived next door, brought me homemade dumplings the week I moved in. "You're very brave," she said in her accented English. "This house, it was empty for 2 years. People came, made trouble. But you have good spirit. You will make it beautiful." Her confidence in me meant more than she knew. On the hardest days when something broke that I couldn't afford to fix, when I discovered yet another hidden problem, when I was so tired I could barely stand, I thought about Mrs. Chen's words. Good spirit. That's what I had, even when I had nothing else. I also discovered a community of other renovators in the neighborhood. We'd meet at the hardware store on Saturday mornings, comparing projects, sharing tips, occasionally trading materials. There was Jake and Melissa, a couple working on the Victorian 2 streets over. There was David, a software engineer, who bought a craftsman bungalow as a hobby project that had completely taken over his life. And there was Vanessa, a single mom who was converting a duplex so she could live in one unit and rent out the other. We formed an unofficial support group, texting each other, photos of problems we encountered, celebrating victories, commiserating over setbacks. They got it in a way my old friends couldn't: the obsession, the exhaustion, the profound satisfaction of building something with your own hands. One evening, about 6 months into the renovation, I had a complete breakdown. I had just discovered that the minor plumbing issue mentioned in the inspection was actually a major sewer line problem that would cost thousands to fix. Money I didn't have, not if I wanted to stay on schedule. I called Marcus, crying so hard I could barely speak. "Come over," he said immediately. "Leave the house. Come to my place." An hour later, I was sitting in his apartment drinking tea while he ordered Thai food. "Tell me everything," he said. I did all of it. The sewer line, the dwindling budget, the fear that I'd bitten off more than I could chew, the nagging voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother telling me I was a failure who'd made another stupid decision. Marcus listened until I ran out of words. Then he said, "First, that voice is wrong. You're not failing, you hit a setback. That's different. Second, we're going to figure this out. I know a guy who owes me a favor. He can probably do the sewer line for cost. Third, you need to stop working 7 days a week. You're going to burn out. I can't afford to slow down. You can't afford not to. Jasmine, you're running on fumes. Take 1 day off a week. Sleep in. Do something that has nothing to do with the house. You'll work better the other 6 days, I promise." I didn't want to admit he was right, but he was. I'd been pushing so hard for so long that I'd forgotten how to rest, how to be a person instead of just a renovation machine. So I started taking Sundays off. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd gotten so used to constant work that relaxation felt foreign. But gradually, I rediscovered small pleasures, reading books that weren't about home improvement, taking walks through different neighborhoods, looking at architecture just for enjoyment, rather than analysis, calling old friends I'd been neglecting. It was during one of these Sunday walks that I bumped into Ashley. Literally, we rounded a corner at the same time and nearly collided. "Jasmine." She looked genuinely shocked. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "Just walking. Connor and I were looking at condos nearby. He wants something with more space." She studied me. "You look different. Good different. Have you been working out?" I almost laughed. "No, I've been renovating a house. Turns out demolition is a pretty good workout." "You're renovating where?" I deflected, not ready to share details. "A place in the city. It's a project." We made awkward small talk for a few more minutes before going our separate ways. As I watched her walk back to where Connor was waiting by their expensive car, I felt something unexpected. Not jealousy, but pity. Ashley had everything I was supposed to want. The successful career, the marriage, the perfect life Mom approved of. But she looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. The renovation continued month after month. Each room I completed felt like winning a small war. The kitchen took 3 months alone, tearing out old cabinets, updating plumbing, installing new countertops, tiling the backsplash. I did most of it myself, watching videos, making mistakes, redoing things until they were right. Bill checked in regularly, offering guidance and the occasional helping hand. "You're getting good at this," he said, examining my tile work. "Really good. Ever think about doing this professionally?" I hadn't, but the idea planted itself in my mind. Maybe this didn't have to be a one-time thing. Maybe I could do this again, help other people see potential in forgotten properties. I worked at the dental office during the week and demolished walls on weekends. I learned to lay tile, to patch drywall, to refinish floors. YouTube became my university again. I made mistakes, so many mistakes, but I learned from each one. My hands developed calluses. My back ached constantly. I smelled like paint thinner and sawdust. I'd never been happier. Months turned into a year, then 2. The house slowly transformed. I salvaged the original hardwood floors, refinishing them until they glowed honey gold. I kept the vintage fixtures, having them restored instead of replaced. I painted the exterior a soft sage green with cream trim, replacing the rotted porch with a new one that matched the original Victorian style. Marcus helped me design a modern kitchen that still felt in keeping with the house's character white subway tiles, butcher block counters, open shelving. We converted the attic into a master suite with dormer windows that flooded the space with light. The overgrown yard became a garden with a stone path and raised beds for vegetables. I haunted estate sales and antique shops, finding furniture that fit the house's personality. A velvet sofa in dusty blue, a dining table made from reclaimed wood, brass fixtures, and vintage rugs. Every piece had a story, had been chosen with care. The neighborhood transformed around me too. Other young people bought the neglected houses on my street. A coffee shop opened on the corner, a real one, not a chain. Then a bookstore, a yoga studio, a farm-to-table restaurant. Property values started climbing. I barely noticed. I was too busy working, saving, improving my house bit by bit. I added a clawfoot tub to the bathroom. I installed a chandelier in the dining room that I'd found at an estate sale for $30 and restored myself. I built custom bookcases flanking the fireplace. 3 years after Mom kicked me out, I was a completely different person. Stronger, more confident, clear about what I wanted. I'd learned I could trust myself, could build something beautiful with my own hands. I still didn't talk to Mom or Ashley much. The occasional text, the obligatory appearance at Thanksgiving. Mom never asked about my life, and I stopped trying to share it. Ashley was busy with her own drama. She and Connor were having problems from what I could gather from her vague posts on social media. One Saturday afternoon in early October, I was outside painting the porch railing when a silver Lexus slowed to a crawl in front of my house. I didn't pay much attention until it stopped completely and the window rolled down. Ashley's face appeared eyes wide behind her sunglasses. Jasmine, she said my name like a question, like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Hey, Ash. I kept painting smooth strokes along the railing. She got out of the car, standing on the sidewalk in designer jeans and heels, completely wrong for the cracked pavement. Her mouth hung open as she stared at my house. What are you doing here? She asked. I live here. You live? Wait, you're renting this place. I own it. The paintbrush paused mid-stroke. Her expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite identify. You own this house, she said flatly, like she was trying to make the words make sense. This house. That's right. Still paying the mortgage, but yeah, it's mine. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I watched her face go pale, then flushed. Jasmine, do you have any idea what properties in this neighborhood are going for right now? I shrugged, focusing on the railing again. I might have looked recently. Ashley started pacing her heels, clicking against the sidewalk. She held her phone to her ear. Mom, you need to hear this. I just drove by Jasmine's place. No, listen to me. She's living in Riverside Park. You know that neighborhood everyone's talking about. Mom, this house is worth... She paused, her voice rising. Wait, it's hers. My sister's. She owns it. I couldn't hear Mom's response, but I could imagine it. The silence, the processing, the recalculation of everything she thought she knew about her failure of a daughter. Ashley ended the call and turned to me. Mom's coming over. I didn't invite her. She's coming anyway. I sighed and set down my paintbrush. Fine. I should finish this section anyway. Ashley wandered closer, looking at the house like she'd never seen anything like it. When did you buy this? About 3 years ago, right after I moved into that studio. But it must have been a wreck back then. It was. And you fixed it yourself? Most of it. Had some help from a friend for the technical stuff. She shook her head slowly. I don't understand. How did you even afford it? Saved every dollar I made. Worked constantly. Bought it for close to way less than it's worth now. I picked up my brush again. You know all that stuff you guys said I should do, get my life together. I did. 20 minutes later, Mom's Mercedes pulled up. She emerged wearing a business suit like she'd come straight from the office, probably had. She stood next to Ashley, both of them staring at my house like it was a museum exhibit. Jasmine. Mom's voice was carefully controlled. Ashley says you own this property. I do. The entire thing. Yes, Mom. The whole house. Bought it, renovated it, own it, free and clear as of 6 months ago. Her jaw tightened. I could see her running calculations, trying to figure out how I'd manage this without her knowledge or help. I'd like to see inside, she said. It wasn't a request, but I was tired of painting anyway. Sure. Take off your shoes, though. I just refinished the floors. Leading my mother and sister through my house felt surreal. I watched them take in the exposed brick wall in the living room, the restored fireplace, the built-in bookcases filled with my growing collection of books, the kitchen with its farmhouse sink, and the vintage chandelier hanging over the dining table. Ashley ran her hand along the marble countertop. "This is incredible, Jazz. Did you have a designer?" "Did it myself. Well, Marcus helped with the architectural stuff." "Marcus Chen from high school." Ashley's eyebrows rose. "Is he your boyfriend?" "He's my friend. He's an architect. He saw potential in this place and helped me realize it." Mom had been silent, moving from room to room with an expression I couldn't read. She studied the details, the crown molding I'd painstakingly restored, the vintage hardware on the cabinets, the way I'd mixed old and new elements throughout. In the master suite, she finally spoke. "How much did you pay for this property?" I named the figure. Her eyes widened slightly. "And it's worth." I named the current market estimate. Ashley had already looked it up, but hearing me say it made it real. The number was roughly 4 times what I'd paid. Mom sat down on my bed, the one I'd found at an estate sale, and reupholstered without asking. She looked smaller, somehow deflated. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "You were working at a dental office. You're still paying a mortgage on this. How did you manage to buy it in the first place?" "I still work at the dental office. I'm a hygienist now. Dr. Martinez paid for my certification." I leaned against the doorframe. I saved everything, lived on nothing, put every spare dollar into this place, learned to do most of the work myself. "Why didn't you tell us?" Ashley asked. "We had no idea you were doing all this." The question hung in the air. I could have said a lot of things. I could have pointed out that neither of them ever asked about my life. I could have mentioned that Mom kicked me out, calling me a failure and a parasite. I could have reminded them that when I was struggling, they offered criticism instead of support. Instead, I just said, "You never seemed interested." Mom flinched, like I'd struck her. "Jasmine, She stopped, seemingly at a loss for words for the first time in my memory. "I thought I was helping, pushing you to be independent." "You called me a failure." "I didn't mean—" She paused, her composure cracking. I was frustrated. "You dropped out of school. You were working these jobs with no future, and I couldn't understand why you weren't trying harder." "I dropped out to take care of Dad." My voice came out harder than I intended. Someone had to drive him to chemo. Someone had to sit with him when he was too sick to be alone. "You were always at work, and Ashley was across the country, so I did it." Silence filled the room. Ashley looked at her feet. "I never asked you to do that," Mom said, but her voice was weak. "No, you didn't. Because then you'd have had to acknowledge what was happening, that Dad was dying, and we were going to lose him. It was easier to focus on work, to pretend everything was fine." Tears were running down Mom's face now, her mascara starting to smudge. I'd never seen her cry before, not even at Dad's funeral. "I failed you," she whispered. "I was so angry at the world for taking him, and I took it out on you. You look so much like him. And every time I saw you, I was reminded that he was gone, and I was still here, and I didn't know how to be a mother without him." She wiped at her eyes with shaking hands. "I convinced myself you were wasting your potential, but really I was just terrified. Terrified you'd end up struggling like I did when I was young. Terrified I couldn't protect you. Terrified of losing you too." Ashley had started crying as well, though I wasn't entirely sure why. I felt my own eyes burning, but refused to let the tears fall, not yet. "When you kicked me out, you told me I was a parasite," I said. "Do you have any idea how much that hurt? I was working 2 jobs, paying rent, trying to save money in an impossible economy, and you made me feel like I was worthless." "I know." Mom's voice broke. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought if I pushed you hard enough, you'd prove me wrong. You'd rise to the challenge. But I should have supported you instead. I should have told you I believed in you." "I didn't need you to believe in me," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I needed to believe in myself, and the only way I could do that was by doing it alone." Mom stood up, taking a tentative step toward me. "Can you forgive me?" It was the question I'd been waiting 3 years to hear, but now that it was here, I didn't know how to answer. The hurt didn't just disappear because she'd apologized. The years of criticism and disappointment had left marks that wouldn't fade overnight. "I don't know," I said. "Honestly, I need time." She nodded, wiping at her eyes again. "That's fair. That's more than fair." Ashley spoke up from where she stood by the window. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry too. I should have stood up for you. I should have questioned Mom when she kicked you out. I was so busy being the golden child, I didn't stop to think about what that meant for you." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. She looked tired. The perfect facade she'd always maintained had cracks in it. Are you okay? I asked. She laughed a bitter sound. Connor and I are getting divorced. He cheated on me with a client. Been going on for months. She wrapped her arms around herself. Mom gave us the house last year, remember? The one we grew up in? Well, it's going to have to be sold to split assets, so I'll be looking for a place to live soon. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom had given Ashley our childhood home, the home I'd been kicked out of, and now Ashley was losing it too. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. Don't be. I'm starting to think Mom did you a favor kicking you out. You had to figure out who you were without all of us telling you. I never did that. I just became who Mom wanted me to be, and now I have no idea who I actually am. We stood there, three women who'd spent years talking past each other, finally saying true things. Mom cleared her throat. Jasmine, I know I have no right to ask this, but could we start over? Not forget the past, but maybe build something new. I thought about it. Thought about the anger I'd carried, how it had fueled me through late nights and hard work. Thought about the satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. But I also thought about Dad, how he'd always tried to bridge the gaps between us, how he'd hated when we fought. We can try, I said finally, but it's going to take work, real work. Not just you feeling guilty for a few weeks and then going back to the way things were. I'll do the work Mom promised, whatever it takes. Ashley nodded. Me too. I didn't quite believe them, not yet, but maybe belief could come later. Built slowly like I'd built this house. One careful choice at a time, one day after another, until something solid emerged. Okay, I said. Let's start with dinner. There's a new restaurant on the corner. We can walk there. As we headed downstairs, Mom paused by the living room bookshelf where I'd placed a framed photo of Dad. He was in the garden of our old house, dirt on his knees, grinning at the camera. He'd be so proud of you, Mom said softly, touching the frame. I should have told you that more. He'd be proud of the woman you've become. Something in my chest loosened just a little. Thanks, Mom. We walked to the restaurant in the golden October light leaves, crunching under our feet. The neighborhood I'd bet everything on had transformed around me, but more than that, I had transformed. I wasn't the scared 23-year-old who'd been called a parasite and told to leave. I was someone who had built a life with her own hands, who trusted herself even when no one else did. At dinner, we talked about small things at first, the menu, the decor, the weather. Gradually, we moved to bigger topics. Ashley told us more about her divorce, the warning signs she'd ignored. Mom talked about work stress, how she'd used it as a shield against dealing with Dad's death. I shared stories about the renovation, the disasters and triumphs, the lessons I'd learned. As the evening wore on, something shifted. We weren't fixed. Healing doesn't work that way, but we were talking, really talking, maybe for the first time in years. When we finished eating, Mom picked up the check before either Ashley or I could reach for it. Let me, she said. It's the least I can do. Outside the restaurant, she hugged me. A real hug, not the awkward side squeeze she usually offered. I really am proud of you, she whispered. Not just the house, everything. The way you didn't give up, even when I made it so much harder than it needed to be. I know, I said, and this time I meant it. Ashley hugged me next. Can I come back sometime? Maybe you could show me how you did some of this stuff. I'm going to need to figure out where to live. And maybe I could try doing something for myself instead of just buying what looks right. Anytime I told her. They drove away in their expensive cars, and I walked back to my house. My house that I built with determination, paint-stained hands, and sheer stubborn will. The porch light glowed warm and welcoming. The sage green paint looked perfect in the dusk. Marcus called as I was heading inside. How'd the painting go? He asked. Got interrupted. Ashley drove by. Then Mom showed up. Oh man, how bad was it? Actually, not as bad as I expected. They apologized. We're going to try to do better. That's good, right? I thought about it sitting on my porch steps looking at the life I'd created. Yeah, it's good. Scary, but good. You want company? I can bring pizza. That sounds perfect. While I waited for Marcus, I went back to painting the porch railing. The mindless, repetitive work felt good, each brushstroke smooth and sure. In the distance, I could hear the neighborhood coming alive, laughter from the restaurant, patio music from someone's open window, the gentle hum of people living their lives. 3 years ago, Mom told me I was a failure and kicked me out of the only home I'd ever known. She gave my sister the house. Now I had built one of my own brick by brick, choice by choice, every nail and coat of paint, a declaration that I was enough. When Marcus arrived with pizza, we sat on the steps and ate straight from the box, watching the sunset burn gold over the rooftops. You know, he said between bites, you could probably flip this place for a massive profit if you wanted. I smiled. I could, but I won't. This one's staying mine. He nodded. Yeah, I get that. We ate in companionable silence for a while. The air was cool, crisp with the promise of fall. You ever think about what's next? Marcus asked. Now that the house is done. Sometimes I admitted. I think maybe I'll help other people do what I did. Teach them how to start small, take control of their lives. Maybe even buy another fixer-upper someday. You'd be great at that, he said. You've got grit and vision. I laughed softly, and a very sore back. We finished the pizza, and after he left, I sat on the porch a little longer, listening to the quiet hum of my street. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to Mom, to Ashley, to anyone. I'd already done it. I'd built something out of nothing. And maybe forgiveness, like renovation, wasn't about erasing the damage, but restoring what was still good and making it stronger than before. Inside, my house smelled faintly of sawdust and lemon oil. The lights cast a golden glow across the hardwood floors I'd sanded with my own hands. I ran my fingers along the doorframe, feeling the smooth grain of the wood. We did it, I whispered to myself, to Dad, to the girl I used to be. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at home.